Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if villain Izuku was a U.A Teacher, Deku x Ochako, Part 1. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, MentalMind. Link is in the description. Also subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's begin the video. The barrel of a gun reflected the iris of a man on its receiving end. Put the money in the damn bag. Hurry up. The pistol-wielding fellow ushered the cashier in a panicked frenzy. A trio of thieves were robbing some desolate convenience store in the underbelly of Hosa City. The criminals were counting on such a low-populated vicinity to shroud them from being thwarted by authorities or any pro-heroes. It was 12 o'clock exactly. The late hour of midnight meant nobody would be interfering with their armed robbery. Not that they needed a gun to pull off the heist. Two of the gang members had clearly visible quirks, and the lone store owner stood no chance. One of the lanky crooks had porcupine quills protruding from his body. The needles stabbed straight through a gray hoodie and dark blue jeans. The second criminal wore a black jacket with matching sweatpants, his skin a rough red stone appearance, as if he were a brick wall. The ringleader stood in the center with his firearm still aimed. His particular quirk remained a mystery due to no visible side effects. As for the cashier who finished filling a backpack full of cash, his quirk matched an overweight appearance. He could expand his fat to a certain extent. However, the pufferfish-type quirk didn't seem like a good idea against three far superior thieves. Instead of fighting back, he handed the week's earnings over, and allowed the trio to rush out of his store with victorious snickering. The three burglars rounded a corner before disappearing into the darkness of a foreboding alleyway. The convenience store owner wasted no time in calling 911 after the culprits fled, unwilling of pursuing the criminals, and risking his life. The crooks cackled as they sorted through the money they had stolen, turning the sprint into a jog. The man with red brick for flesh high-fived his leader, while the porcupine howled with laughter. "We got mad stacks, fellas," the boss sneered, as he glanced back at the place they had just robbed. Wads of Benjamins tumbled out of his hands like a deck of cards being tossed into the sky. "Hey man, shouldn't we look through all that later? We should put some distance between us and this place first, you know?" The quill quirk criminal voiced his concern through a suggestion when he wasn't chuckling about the success of their theft. "Why do you always gotta kill the vibe by saying those sort of things?" the brick bandit complained, as he gathered up stray dollar bills that had become strewed across the alley. "Don't worry about it. The cops won't get here for another 40 minutes. And it isn't like there's some sort of hero in the area." The group leader reassured his friends while assisting in picking up dropped money. None of the thieves noticed a fourth shadowy figure perched on the fire escape above them. "Yeah, you're probably right," the needle-protruding punk laughed off his worries. Like a bad omen to counteract his statement, the streetlight that dimly lit their alleyway began flickering. All of the crooks jumped in terror as the bulb popped and flashed. "It just shorted out? You should have seen your faces," the porcupine teased his team members. "You got scared too," the brick bandit pointed an accusing finger. "Cut it out. You two are just like a couple of kids. Come on, let's get out of here. This place is giving me the creeps anyway." The leader motioned for his partners to follow. Before the turn-in could leave, the fourth figure that had been spying on them landed in their way. The triad took a few steps back as they tried to get a look at the newcomer. A dark green shadow casted its shape over them as it stood straight. A long tattered cloth blew in the wind like some sort of scarf, giving off an eerie presence. Slow, but very audible breathing broke any disturbing silence. The sound haunted the criminals, as it echoed from a sort of respirator shaped to resemble a smile. Medium-length objects poked out from his cowl, looking very much like horns in such a dark atmosphere. Despite the intimidating presence, none of the crooks turned to run the other way. "Back off, man. Don't try to be some sort of hero." The one with the gun threatened the mysterious man with his firearm. The ringleader's lackeys gulped back any fear and began chuckling nervously. "Yeah, this guy must be new. He doesn't look familiar like those other ones," the brick bandit chimed in. A wave of relief washed over the triune as they realized they weren't dealing with a pro-hero. "Return the money. This is your only chance." The voice was masked with some sort of voice modification filter. A deep and distorted effect in the green shadow's tone sent several chills up the spines of each thief. The order from such a being caused the underlings to glance at their superior for confirmation on whether they should comply or not. "Well, look at that, he speaks." The ringleader kept a calm facade as he mocked the green figure. "What was it you told us?" the trio's boss asked a rhetorical question. "This is your only chance." He put on a gruff impression of being cloaked in darkness. "Yeah, this is your only chance. Get lost, or I'm filling you with lead." The gun-toting criminal threatened his opponent again while cocking it for emphasis. A moment passed as they had a standoff, which ended with the green figure reaching into a pitch-black utility belt just as quickly as the criminal letting his finger slip on the trigger. The gang of bandits covered their faces when 4 small pellets were thrown at them, unsuspecting of an explosion concealing equally as dark gas. The trio busted into fits of coughing as their leader shot blindly into the black fog. The target, shrouded in smoke, evaded bullets with relative ease thanks to his sneak attack. While still having the upper hand, the Reseda person grabbed the lid off of a garbage can to toss like a frisbee. Thanks to the improvised projectile, the trash cover knocked the weapon out of the gunwielder's hand. With an opening granting itself, the green figure rushed forward and prepared to drive a fist into one of his enemy's faces. Unfortunately, the outnumbered man chose the wrong opponent to punch, and his fist collided with a solid stone surface. A loud crunch could be heard as the knuckles connected, causing the fighter to reel back in pain as he clutched the injured hand. It was now the turn of the man made of brick to take a swing. The criminal wailed into his enemy and sent the green individual crashing into another wall of the alley. As black mist evaporated, the trio was able to see an injured opponent clinging to their bruised side. When the green-suited person wasn't nursing that wound, they clenched and unclenched their fists. Torn fabric in his gloves revealed the red liquid of blood leaking from scraped knuckles. "Not so tough now, are ya?" The ringleader taunted his downed opponent with a light scoff. "Waste this fool," he ordered the porcupine burglar with a nod. The quills flew out with a simple fling of his arm, sending sharp projectiles straight for the target with an intent to kill. Before the needles could make impact, the green figure rolled to the side in an effort to dodge the incoming attack. Each quill speared the wall in the missing man's place, except for a lone spike that dug itself deep into the green figure's already injured side. A pained grunt escaped the Reseda person's lips as they found a hand clinging onto the protruding porcupine quill. No time remained for pleasantries, as the green-suited being retaliated with a sweeping kick to wipe out his opponents like bowling pins. The crook who used the gun in the robbery resorted to his quirk upon being bested in combat. A concussive blast erupted from the man's palms and knocked the green being into the wall again. A second time, the porcupine person shot his quills at the do-gooder. The Reseda man dodged the attack with a phenomenal display of acrobatics and performed a somersault that brought down his foot into the needle-shooting thief. With one of his partners rendered unconscious, the brick bandit let out a frustrated battle cry before charging the one responsible. The green-suited man dodged a flurry of punches until one got a lucky hit and knocked him upwards with an uppercut. In an attempt to brace his fall, the Reseda figure grabbed onto the fire escape on his way down and felt the weight of gravity take effect. A loud snap indicated immense strain on the man's arm, making him gasp in agony. Still using the velocity of his drop, the green figure swung in a strange arch and kicked the brick bandit with a heavy black boot. The attack didn't have much effect, but both fighters put distance between themselves after such an intense altercation. The green shadow took this moment to yank out the quill that had been stuck in his side the entire battle. Blood spewed from the wound like a spray bottle before he applied pressure to the spot. That injury was bound to leave a lasting scar. Despite his several aching wounds, the green figure moved forward with the will to finish what he had started. One was out cold while the other two thieves gave one another a glance. Cocky smirks etched across their faces as they looked at their opponent like prey. The boss released another concussion burst that rattled the green figure's bones like a set of keys. After such a powerful attack, the Reseda man wasn't prepared for another whack from the brick bandit. Each crook stood on either side of the downed do-gooder, kicking at him with confident cackling. The ringleader prepared to fire off another concussive blast to finish off the defeated person, not expecting for such a beaten man to retaliate yet again. Neither thief was ready for the green figure to grab hold of the leader's arm and thrust it into the brick burglar so the concussion burst could be used against him. The Reseda's shadow followed up with several jabs to the ringleader's face and finished his barrage of attacks with a spinning kick that landed on the man's jaw. The brick bandit stirred before the green figure drove his foot into the criminal's face. The only one who wasn't unconscious yet was the boss of the trio, who attempted to desperately crawl away. The marauder clasped his fingers around the gun he had dropped early on into the fight, but never got to use it again, as a boot stepped on his hand to prevent any kind of usage. A dragged-out crunch echoed through the alley, as the green figure crushed his enemy's hand, followed by the scream of anguish that escaped the ringleader's mouth. From inside the convenience store, the owner hung up his phone after informing authorities of a committed crime, and turned his attention to the muffled shout. Curiosity overcame the cashier as he investigated the commotion. Cries for help lead him to the dimly lit alleyway. The streetlight continued to flicker with each punch that the green figure landed on the beaten ringleader of criminals. The cashier couldn't help but let out an audible gasp upon seeing the thieves that had just robbed his store strewed across the alley in an unconscious manner. The one responsible heard the sudden noise and slowly turned his head to look at the newcomer despite being mid-punch. The light flickered one last time, and in that moment of darkness allowed the green shadow to disappear. Izuku Midoriya let himself sink into the bathtub filled with ice cubes, instantly turning the crystal clear water into a murky red tint mixed with dirt and sweat. Blood leaked from the man's wounds as they soaked in the filthy liquid, the burning sensation given off from the injuries only pleased by the cold temperature he created. A tattered green suit was balled up next to the tub, many tears, and holes in it needing to be sewn back together. The color of his outfit matched the messy length of groggy hair that soon dived underwater, as well. Izuku felt like he could stay beneath the surface forever, allowing the cool and refreshing feel to wash against his skin. The noise of Midoriya's cell phone vibrating against the shut lid of his toilet is what caused him to resurface. A wet hand reached for the device before he took a look at what the source of his notification could be. A text message was marked unread. The sender was named Izuku Midoriya. Izuku faintly smiled upon reading the name of his daughter, and opened the inbox to see what she had sent. Got scared at Yago's house. Is it okay if I cancel the sleepover and come home tonight? Shit, Izuku groaned as he forced himself to climb out of the bathtub. The father sighed as he texted back his daughter, I'll come and pick you up in a few minutes. Midoriya recalled the events that had led up to his eventful night as he began to dry off with a towel. Dry blood stuck to the cloth as it dragged against his bruised skin, causing Izuku to flinch in pain. His wife had been given a mission the same night that his daughter decided to sleep over at a friend's house. The green-haired man partially regretted his decision on how to spend the night, as he dabbed a cotton ball covered in rubbing alcohol against his stab wound. Hostess City was littered with crime, the percentage of robberies spiking ever so drastically. With no heroes to protect the area, Izuku decided to take up the task as the place's defender. The only problem with that, Izuku Midoriya is a quirkless human in a world full of powered beings. It goes without mentioning that Japan doesn't allow heroes without a license. If you use your quirk without proper documentation, you'll be written up as an outlaw, and quite possibly considered a villain. However, there are a few rare cases in which people use their quirks to perform heroic acts without a license. These certain beings are called vigilantes, and get treated in the same regard as villains. In the new generation of heroes, vigilantes seem to become extinct. Midoriya dared to take that opportunity and save a few lives if he could. The buzzing of his phone sent the train of thought within Izuku's mind flying off its rails. Thanks, Daddy. Please hurry. Midoriya kept a faint smile during the second text. His eyes diverted from the screen to his pile of vigilante clothes. A reseda green and pitch black design covered the outfit head to toe, only altered by a silver mouthpiece. An equally dark green scarf draped from the top until it reached his waist length where a large black utility belt was strapped. The dark color matched gloves and boots padded with hard material to put more power into his attacks. Izuku began to worry about where to hide his costume, and quickly stashed it behind the medicine cabinet. With one less problem, he finished tending to the injuries by applying bandages. Izuku didn't worry about what clothes to wear, as he slapped on a plain white t-shirt and bright blue pajama bottom. The green-haired man went barefoot as he fetched his car keys and let out an exhausted yawn. Midoriya caught himself in the reflection of his mirror and cringed at the ghastly sight. Bloodshot eyes sunk into heavy bags, reminding him of the old U.A teacher named Shota Aizawa. Izuku caught himself grinning as he reminisced about his sensei called Eraserhead and the good old days of UA. Well, mostly good. The ringing of his cell phone made him snap out of the daze, checking the caller ID to see it was his wife. Hey Ochako, he lazily but excitedly answered. U.A was where he met her after all. Hi honey. I was just calling to make sure you hadn't burned down the house or anything, Ochako teased on the other end of the line with a small giggle. Izuku laughed along with his wife while rolling his eyes. Not yet, Izuku played along, but I have to go pick up a little early. She got scared during the sleepover, the husband quickly added. Oh no, poor baby. Do you need me to come home? I can help dash. Ochako became flustered as she worried about her daughter. No, I've got it handled. You have important hero work to do. Don't stress about us, Izuku reassured his wife with a nervous chuckle. Are you sure? I don't want you to strain yourself either, Ochako replied. Izuku clutched his wounds with gritted teeth as she mentioned straining something. Thanks honey, but I'm fine. Really? The green-haired man rasped out. Okay, let me know if anything changes. I'll see you tomorrow night otherwise. Love you, the caring wife, and hero cooed. Love you too, the injured husband replied before hanging up with an exasperated sigh. Izuku Midoriya knocked on the door and waited impatiently for an answer. His spirits were lifted when it was his daughter who opened it. Hey, he greeted as she ran into his arms. Daddy, she happily embraced her father, but unknowingly squeezed his stab wound. Izuku winced in pain as he held back a grunt, carefully pushing his daughter away to recuperate. Apparently hugs hurt just as much as the bad guys and their quirks. After thanking and apologizing to the other parents, Izuku escorted his daughter to their car. The drive back home was quiet and awkward for both of them. Either opted to attempt finding a song on the radio since there were never any good ones. Izuku glanced from the corner of his eyes to see his daughter pouting in the passenger seat and decided to ask, Are you okay? Daddy's not mad at you if that's what you're worried about. Hikio's twiddled with her fingers as she muttered to herself, How can I ever be a hero if I'm too scared to spend the night at a friend's house? Luckily, Izuku was a master at deciphering the murmurs and caught on rather quickly. You have nothing to worry about, Hikios. You're just as smart and amazing as your mother when it comes to hero stuff, the father reassured his daughter. Just as pretty too, Izuku added with a goofy smile. It was true though. Hikios shared her mother's round angel face and short luxurious locks. The only difference was her hair being green like Izuku's instead of brown like Chako's, along with inherited freckles that could go unnoticed to the untrained eye. But I'm not brave like you, Hikios continued to pout. What do you mean? The statement from his daughter caught Izuku off guard and caused him to raise an eyebrow in curiosity. Midoriya thanked the late hour for keeping a minimal number of cars on the road, for the embarrassment of being praised nearly made him swerve into the other lane. Mom told me about how you two met at the entrance exam. She described how you were the only one to run in and save her while the others ran away. How did you do that? Even though you're quirkless? Izuku's daughter explained what she meant before asking a touchy question. Izuku gulped as he clutched the steering wheel in a sweaty grip. To tell you the truth, I don't really know. My legs just sorta moved on their own, you know, Midoriya answered truthfully. Oh, Hikios didn't seem motivated by her father's response. But I'm sure you'll do the same thing. It's just all about being a good person. That's all, Izuku quickly added with a hopeful, but painfully awkward laugh. Dad, am I going to stay quirkless forever too? Hikios kept the same disappointment in her tone. The question hurt more than the beating that Izuku received only a few hours ago, nearly making the grown man cry. I don't know, sweetie. Probably, the father just couldn't bring himself to lie to his daughter, and answered truthfully. Izuku had to stop the car as soon as she started crying, immediately consoling her with a hug. Hey, don't cry. You know it'll start if you do, the green-haired man begged. Sorry, Hikios choked out in between sobs. That did it. Now both Midoriyas were crying. Listen to me, Hikios. Don't let being quirkless stop you. Look at me. I made it into the U.A even though the odds were against me. Izuku offered words of encouragement to cheer her up. But you didn't pass the exam to get your provisional hero license, and never became a pro hero like you wanted to with Mom, Hikios sobbed. The reminder stung Izuku's heart, but he persevered. Then do what I couldn't, succeed where I didn't. It isn't impossible. Izuku shook his daughter to emphasize his point. When he saw that she was still distraught over the revelation of having no quirk, he thought about sharing something he never told anyone. Not even his wife. There's a quirk that can be passed on to others, Izuku announced. What? Hikios asked in disbelief. I'm sure you've heard about him in school before, and it's something you'll learn about more in the U.S. when you get in. There used to be a symbol of peace called All Might that everybody looked up to. He was the best of the best, the greatest pro hero ever. Before I went to the U.A, I got to meet him, if you can believe it. He told me I would have been the right successor to take on his power that had been passed down through generations. A quirk that was one for all, Izuku explained. What did you do? Hikios marveled at the news her father was sharing. I turned him down. Izuku's expression then turned grim, as any excitement within the car died. But why? Hikios wondered. I wanted to prove that I could still become a hero despite being quirkless. I wanted to show everyone that it wasn't impossible, that anybody could become a hero. I also felt I wasn't the right choice to be given such a power. Something so strong shouldn't be in the hands of, well, anyone besides All Might, Izuku solemnly answered. Do you regret not taking it? Hikios asked. Izuku lowered his head as he contemplated the question. He wanted to reply to her by saying everyday comma, but knew that wasn't what she needed or wanted to hear. When Izuku was a child no older than her, he'd asked his mom if he could become a hero without a quirk. Inko Midoriya merely told her son she was sorry, and shattered his hopes and dreams. Izuku needed to hear something different back then. He wanted to be told that it wasn't impossible. Now, the moment began to repeat itself in the next generation. Never, Izuku lied. Hikios smiled as she wiped away the tears from her eyes. Thanks, Dad. She sounded much more optimistic. I love you, Hikios, was all that Izuku could manage to say in response, as he became choked up. Before the two could hug one another again, Hikios stopped midway and pointed out a red splotch on her father's white t-shirt. Dad, what happened there? She worriedly asked. Just some ketchup I spilled. Yep, stained my shirt. Izuku cursed himself for picking out white as the color he wore. Apparently one too many hugs caused the scar to tear open again, and caused blood to ooze through his bandages. Dad, you're always such a messy eater, Hikios teased her father while being none the wiser. The next day started in a blur for Izuku, as his body acted like it was sleepwalking. The green-haired man performed his morning duties before his daughter could wake up, which revolved around the common things such as laundry or cleaning. In the end, what really woke him up was the smell of scrambled eggs and bacon frying on a pan, as coffee brewed. The aroma must have also attracted Hikios, because she ran into the kitchen while still wearing her pajamas, as well. Good morning, Dad, the green-haired girl greeted her father. Morning, Hikios. Why don't you go get ready while I make breakfast? Izuku suggested. Good idea. After all, Today is the big day, Hikios reminded her father of the entrance exam. Suddenly, everything seemed much more critical, as the green-haired man accidentally spilled coffee everywhere when pouring himself a mug. Regardless, Izuku Midoriya was now fully awake and kicked into action as he set his daughter's food on the table. Shoot, you're right, I have to get ready too. Izuku panicked as he stumbled over his feet and raced to get an outfit from his wardrobe. Hikios simply giggled over her father's silly demeanor and began eating breakfast as the man sorted through different clothes. Hey dad, if you never received a hero license and never became a pro hero, how come you get to teach for the school? Hikios asked through a mouthful of eggs. Izuku struggled to tie on a malachite green necktie as he responded, another example of why being quirkless doesn't put out as many barriers as you'd think. The previous principal was so impressed with my observational skills when it came to quirks and the ingenuity I portrayed during the sports festival that he offered me a job as a teacher whenever I became old enough, Midoriya cheerfully explained. That's pretty cool, I guess, Hikios mumbled in between bites. Sweetie, don't speak with your mouth full. You know your mother hates that. Izuku gave a meek scolding. Sorry dad. Hikios continued talking with a mouth full of food despite her apology. So, what do you think? Izuku presented his outfit. The father flashed a toothy grin that complimented his elegant suit. A black waistcoat matched his trousers and formal dress shoes. However, a dark green dress shirt synced the color of his hair and eyes. The tie that Izuku had so much trouble with was finally done properly. Wow, you look pretty spiffy. Just, what about the hair? Hikios giggled. What's wrong with my hair? Just because it's a little messy and curly doesn't mean it isn't stylish. Izuku enjoyed making his daughter laugh. After enough horsing around, he put on his best serious dad tone and told her to hurry up and get ready. Secretly, he was just as nervous as she was about the entrance exam since he'd be part of the spectator and judging group. I've got to make a quick stop at Fugu's on the way there, Izuku announced to his daughter as they strapped into their seat belts. Come, not Fugu's, his daughter complained. The duo would often stop by the convenience store on their way to or from her school to pick up occasional groceries, and Hikios slowly began to hate going there. Come on Hikios, it isn't that bad, Izuku stammered out a response as he began to notice her sulking attitude. The truth was, he didn't really need any groceries, he just wanted to check on his friend after the armed robbery. I guess, Hikios continued to pout with folded arms. Here, you can wait in the car and listen to something on the radio, Izuku nervously suggested, as he flipped through numerous stations. He eventually wound up finding the one he'd listened to present Mixed Talk Show on, now replaced by his former classmates' constant jams. Kyokujiro took up that particular music position as a pro hero, and Hikios tended to enjoy her songs from time to time. Do well on the entrance exam, and I'll see if Kyoka has time freed up to meet with us over tea or something. Izuku made a promise he prayed he'd be able to follow up on. The green-haired man felt sweat beating off his forehead as he contemplated asking his wife to ask her for him. Really? That'd be awesome. Thanks, Daddy. Hikios suddenly turned her frown upside down. What did I get myself into? Izuku asked himself as he pulled into the parking lot of Fugu's store. I'll be right back. Just keep, jamming out. He gave a shaky thumbs up with a nervous laugh per usual. Mr. Midoriya, it's great to see you again. The chubby cashier greeted his customer with a hug. Hey Fugu, I told you to call me Izuku, the green-haired man stammered out, as he returned the embrace with a pat on the fat man's back. With a suit and tie like that, you're Mr. Midoriya, Fugu teased with a joking finger point. Thanks Fugu, you flattered me. So, business is treating you well? Izuku chuckled nervously. You must have missed the morning news. This place is gonna be packed with customers soon after they see this. I tell ya. The store owner raised the volume on a mounted television via remote control. A masked vigilante was caught on the street camera of a back alley dash. A reporter provided commentary over grainy black and white footage of Izuku in his suit battling the quirk-powered burglars. Midoriya's heart thumped heavily with each word as he watched the events of last night play out on live television. And that's not the only station. Fugu revealed that every media outlet was covering the sudden arrival of a new vigilante. As he flipped through numerous channels, Izuku gulped back a lump in his throat as he realized the crisis at hand. If anyone recognized him somehow, he would be immediately put in prison like any other criminal. It was crazy, let me tell ya. 3 guys robbed my store and nearly made it out of here with my money. Then, this guy comes out of nowhere and lays a number on me. Fugu excitedly shares information that Izuku already knew about. It seems they want him arrested for vigilantism. You know, the violation of dash. Izuku began saying the same words as some reporter until Fugu cut him off. I don't care what anybody says. In my eyes, that guy's just as much a hero as any of the schmucks running around these days, Fugu declared. Izuku couldn't help but smile upon hearing such a compliment. He even started to become teary-eyed. The fact that someone was appreciative of his help meant the world to Izuku. "Oh, you got something in your eye?" Fugu took notice of the water building up. "Yes, just some hair particles," Izuku shouted a little too loud, as he wiped the tears away. When Midoriya finally returned to his car, he was shocked to hear Kyokujiro talking about the vigilante as well. "I think it's good that someone out there wants to make a difference despite not having a license. Maybe they just couldn't manage to get what they needed, and this is how they're sharing their voice." The woman used music as a metaphor in her standpoint. "Dad, did you hear about the vigilante guy?" Hikios shared the same enthusiasm Fugu had about Izuku's alter ego, and it worried the father. Yeah? Let's not listen to that too much." Izuku quickly shot her down, as he switched the station to some kind of old rock song. "What? Why not? What's wrong with vigilantes?" Hikios wondered. "Nothing," Izuku shouted back a little too fast. "I mean, ask your mother," he then stammered. The panicked father became relieved, as he heard one of Hikios' favorite songs come on. "Listen, it's Everlong by Foo Fighters. You love this song?" Izuku shouted over the roaring music, as he turned up the volume. Hikios seemed to forget about vigilantes right away, as she started singing along. "If anything could ever be this real forever. If anything could ever be this good again. The only thing I'll ever ask of you is to promise not to stop when I say when." His daughter sang the lyrics word for word. The moment seemed to reflect on it, as a warm beam radiated from the sun, and glimmered into the car where Izuku held his daughter's hand while the other stayed on his steering wheel. And she sang. Izuku sang the next lyric for his daughter before the melody took over. The rest of their drive seemed to go smoothly like the rhythmic beat. "Alright honey, remember, I'll be watching. Or if that makes you nervous, then don't remember that." Izuku cursed himself for being so bad at giving pep talks. "It's okay dad, I'll be fine." Hikios giggled, as she hugged her father. "I know you can do it." Izuku encouraged his daughter before the two broke apart. He watched, as she walked towards the crowd of other children seeking to become heroes. The quirkless girl amongst powerful examinees, every one of them thriving to become the next generation of pro-heroes. The vigilante was all anyone would talk about, as they waited for the presentation to begin. Murmurs and whispers shot across the auditorium, as people shared their standpoint on whether an unregistered hero should be considered an outlaw or crusader. Many opinions didn't hold by much other than the children thinking he was just plain cool. Hikios Midoriya remained a shy and timid girl despite wanting to join in on the conversation with logical argument. The green-haired lass had a difficult time finding herself a seat due to the social anxiety she somehow inherited from her father. It wasn't safe to say she was an introvert. It just took a while for her to open up to people. Once you got her talking, Hikios would be just as social and bubbly as her mother. Luckily for her, another girl her age with long orange hair offered the young Midoriya a seat. "Hey, you can sit next to me if you want." The friendly gesture reminded Hikios a lot of her mother. "Thanks, I was getting worried that I wouldn't find a spot." Hikios did her best not to stutter like her father. "Seriously, how is it even possible to inherit a trait?" The green-haired girl then realized she was muttering the question aloud. Another characteristic picked up from spending too much time with her dad. "Well, worry no more. I'm yours by the way." The redhead introduced herself with a small bow while remaining seated. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Hikios Midoriya." The other teen politely returned the gesture before sitting down. Yuro's eyes suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree during the 4th of July. "You mean, like Ochako Midoriya? Uravity, the number 4 hero?" The redhead went into full-on geek mode. That tended to be the usual reaction whenever Hikios shared her last name with anybody. "Yep, the one and only," the green-haired lass chuckled nervously. The teenage girl felt shivers run up her spine upon noticing how much she acted like her father. "I really need to stop that. That's so cool. What's it like having a pro-hero as your mom, and one that ranks so highly?" Yuro began bombarding Hikios with all too familiar questions. The green-haired girl merely shrugged in response. "I mean, she's cool, and it's awesome that she can be such a great icon. The only thing that sucks about it is that I rarely see her since the job requires a lot of stakeouts and patrols whenever she isn't on a mission." "Oh, so you don't get to see your mom too often, eh? That sucks." "What about your dad?" Yu continued to pray. Even though the two had just met and remained acquaintances in such a way, the two carried on a conversation like they had known each other for years. As if on cue to answer Yuro's question, Izuku Midoriya took the stage so he could address the crowd of children. "Could I please have everyone's attention?" The well-dressed man spoke into a microphone before tapping it to quiet those who didn't listen. The slight feedback from each thump silenced any other mild whispers. "Thank you. That's my dad," Hikios quickly replied to her newfound friend before the presentation could begin. Yuro gasped over the green-haired girl having two amazing parents, one who was a pro-hero, and another that worked for the prestige school known as U.A. I'm here to present the guidelines of your practice. The assessment will go as follows for all examinees. You'll be experiencing a 10-minute trial that allows you to bring along whatever you want. After I explain the rules, you'll each head to your testing locations. Izuku cleared his throat. After a moment of awkward silence, Midoriya sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck before continuing. U.A had informed him of the entrance exams changes to further ensure participants could qualify. Whenever Izuku had taken the test, the school used robots in their practical, allowing partakers to use their quirks to their fullest extent and destroy their targets. However, difficulty had been raised when reality became implemented. Heroes wouldn't be killing villains, so the students would have to learn how to pull their punches or hold back. Izuku prepared to share the change with the waiting audience. The aim of this exercise is to eliminate as many villains as you can. Usage of your quirks are prohibited, as long as you only use them to incapacitate the targets. What you're all facing is a real criminal being offered time shaved from his sentence for participating. Izuku's announcement gained a wave of gasps and murmurs from the crowd. The green-haired speaker felt the same concern when he had the news sprung on him too. During Izuku's time at U.A when he had been a student, a league of villains had a member who could duplicate himself with several clones. Pro-heroes had captured the criminal called twice and forced him to comply with their training for future generations. Izuku continued explaining despite the audience's reaction. Each villain eliminated or captured will result in 5 points. As for how you can receive more, you can reduce property damage and earn 1 or 2 depending on how you do so. If you invoke destruction by accident or on your own terms, it will result in a 10-point reduction. The crowd groaned upon hearing the rules. Hikiyos kept a sly smirk on her face when her father didn't share the secret point system. Ochako had explained hidden rules about rescuing people, and how Izuku had managed to earn more points that way when he had saved her. Of course, playing the antihero and attacking other examinees is prohibited, the green-haired announcer added in his speech. Doing so will result in an immediate disqualification. The regulations for this are pretty thorough, U.A quietly noted. Anyone within proximity of hearing her whisper nodded in agreement. That'll be all from me for now. I look forward to seeing what you all can do out in the field. Until then, I leave you with our school motto. Plus ultra, Izuku awkwardly proclaimed. Hikiyos rolled her eyes before slapping the palm of her hand against her face. Dad, she groaned. Teenagers of all ages mingled with one another outside of massive metallic doors that looked tall enough to accommodate MT Lady if she was still around, and in her gigantic form. Hikiyos shyly poked her index fingers together, as she sized up the competition, and realized everybody was roughly 2 or 3 years older than her. The young girl felt her confidence plummet, as she combined that with the worry of everyone's quirks while she had nothing. The only sense of comfort was the arrival of the other girl she had met during the preparation presentation. Hey Hikiyos, U.A waved to her new friend. U.A, I'm so glad to see you. Aren't you nervous? The green-haired lass wondered. Not with you around. U.A playfully poked Hikiyos. Me? The young Midoriya pointed to herself in confusion. U.A, I think you've got it all wrong. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I don't have a quirk, the green-haired girl timidly revealed. Really? You're quirkless? No matter, in that case, you'll probably enjoy my quirk even more. U.A kept a cheerful tone. Your quirk? Hikiyos thought back to what her father had shared in the car last night. Can you pass it on to others or something? The green-haired lass began to tremble with excitement. Well, sorta. I call my quirk Ameliorate. It basically gives other people extra strength, stamina, speed, that sort of thing. The only downside is that it only lasts for 5 minutes, and that's half the length of the exam, U.A explained. I don't care, that's still awesome. Thanks so much for teaming up with me, Hikiyos exclaimed. Before the two could rejoice over one another's friendship any further, the large metal walls began to slowly crank open. The sound of a blowhorn indicated it was time for their test to start. Begin. A female voice confirmed this by shouting through a loudspeaker. Right off the bat, everybody stormed the entrance like it was a race. The landscape was littered with the villains' clones, each one either rushing head-on to fight back or running the other way. It instantly broke into chaos, as one kid soared overhead with angel wings sprouting from their back. Another portrayed an impressive quirk by releasing a sonic scream into the opponents. The ground became quicksand in one area, and criminal clones began sinking into it. Hikiyos panicked, as she watched examinees rack up points left and right while she achieved none. U.A, use your quirk on me, Hikiyos called out to her partner. The redhead wasted no time transferring power through a single touch. Just like that, Hikiyos Midoriya could suddenly punch someone 50 feet back. From the spectator booth reserved for teachers and pro-heroes only, Izuku Midoriya gasped at his daughter's sudden display of power. It was only after taking notice of the girl alongside her that he realized it was some type of temporarily lended quirk. Izuku became fascinated with such a discovery, and began scribbling notes inside a journal he kept with him to analyze potential students. Another teenage female with hair as white as snow pulled into a ponytail began creating mannequins made of ice. Izuku's intrigue peaked when he saw the glacier statues come to life so they could act as an army for the girl. There seemed to be no limit, as she created 4 at a time to make up for any that became shattered during combat. While some people had flashy and beautiful quirks such as that, others resorted to other tactics. One boy was actually eating rocks and forced himself to upchuck the objects as acidic projectiles. No doubt, his strategy worked. It was just really grossing everybody out. Meanwhile, Hikios continued to round up points for both herself and Yuro. How much is that? She panted heavily while asking the question in between breaths. Sweat drenched the girl from head to toe, clearly showing she wasn't used to this kind of scenario. I think 15 for you, and 10 for me, Yuro weakly replied, as she hung her head. Hikios had to force herself to gulp back any doubts of passing. Then we have to keep fighting. She clenched a fist to emphasize her point, but was shocked to feel the strength she once had evaporate upon flexing. 5 minutes is already over. What do we do now? Yuro began to panic. It's time that I pull out my secret weapon. Hikios then unraveled a cloth that wrapped around her neck like a scarf. When a group of clones advanced on her, they weren't expecting a full-on assault. The weapon worked like a sort of capture tape, as it wrapped around the gang of criminals. None of them could break free since the material was made of a steel wire alloy woven with carbon nanofibers. With the restraints immobilizing her enemies, Hikios and Yuro performed a team-up attack to finish them off. Where'd you learn something like that? Yuro gawped. From the spectator stands, Izuku smiled over witnessing his daughter's presentation of skill. When the green-haired man was a young boy, the homeroom teacher had taken pity on him for being quirkless. Shota Aizawa not only used his quirk against villains, but a form of various Japanese martial arts. The technique had been taught and passed down to the Midoriyas. That puts us both at 30 points now. Hikios avoided the question, but kept a goofy grin on her face upon receiving the compliment. The highest number on record after having the robots switched out with clones was only 60, meaning they were about halfway to passing. The only problem was that the girls only had 3 minutes left to achieve the goal. That was when the duo spotted a boy defending himself with a force field quirk, as several clones tried breaking through the shield. There, that's our chance. Hikios pointed out the crisis, and made a mad dash to rescue the fellow examinee. Yuro followed closely behind, as the green-haired girl promptly wiped out the criminal clones. That places me at 50. I should be good enough to pass. Now let's focus on getting yours, young Midoriya grinned. Watch out, Yuro warned her friend while tackling Hikios out of the way for a giant piece of rubble to soar overhead. Thanks. Hey, that means you get some rescue points, Hikios happily exclaimed. Rescue points? Yuro and the force field boy cocked their heads in confused unison. Hikios quickly clasped her hands over her mouth upon realizing she accidentally let that secret slip out. However, no further questions or explanations could be given, as the buzzer sounded to indicate the exam's end. The test has concluded. That will be all, the same female voice from before announced over the intercom. Did I pass? Did I pass? Did I, Dad? Did I? Hikios repeated herself like a broken record. Calm down, Hikios. Izuku frantically waved his hands as she cornered him in the parking lot. I don't know yet, and even if I did, I can't answer that. Kane, his daughter began to pout, as Izuku opened the door to his car for her. You'll find out in about a week. That's usually how long it takes to process these sort of things. The father explained the situation, as best as he could while also getting into the vehicle. A week? The outburst portrayed a familiar fierce demeanor that scared Izuku Midoriya more than anything. Right now, his daughter was giving off the same intimidating attitude his wife occasionally let through when either being competitive or determined. Calm down, Hikios. It'll go by fast, Izuku reassured the girl. The father thanked God above for the sudden cell phone call interruption. Look, it's Mom. She probably wants to know how you did. He showed his daughter the caller ID. Did she pass? Did she pass? Did she? Ochako chanted the same eager begging Hikios had moments ago. Izuku's relief was suddenly ripped away from him, as he realized this would only fuel her desperate need to know if she got into the U.A. Dad says I have to wait a week to find out, Hikios huffed. This earned a nervous chuckle from the green-haired father. You're a teacher there. Shouldn't you know if she got in or not? Ochako raved. Honey, I swear I'd tell you if I did. We just have to wait for the letter like everyone else. Izuku stammered out his response as quickly as possible. Fine, but if you can get the answer sooner, then you'd better, Ochako pleaded. Yeah, I can't wait. I have to know, Hikios also begged. I'll do what I can. Izuku sighed in defeat, while his daughter performed several fist pumps. After the Midoriyas made it home, Izuku went straight into the kitchen to start making dinner, while Hikios flipped through several manga. Make sure you set the table after you finish reading that one. Your mother will be home any minute, and I want to surprise her, Izuku shouted over the refrigerator's humming. Fien, Hikios groaned, as she closed the magazine and went to help. After they finished preparing a candlelit supper with the feast consisting of tempura, Ochako walked through the door, as if on cue. Mommy. Hikios greeted her mother with a huge hug. Hey honey. Izuku joined the embrace while pecking his wife on the cheek with a kiss. Oh my gosh, that smells so good. Thank you both so much, Ochako gushed, as she turned a shade of crimson. I'm starved, let's dig in. The three then sat down for a family meal that none have had in a while. As Hikios mentioned to Yuro, Izuku Midoriya was rarely home due to constant hero work. The household was normally occupied only by two, with the occasional appearance of Izuku's wife twice a month. The moments like these were soaked in completely by the young girl, as she laughed along with her mother and father. Watching the two blush and stare at each other made her smile more than anything, proud to see her parents together again. Everlong by Foo Fighters played on a low volume in the background, the lyrics matching the scene, as they all danced together happily. Ochako nuzzled her head into her husband's chest, as it slowly became a slow dance. The two held one another, taking in the touch for the first time in a long time. If anything could ever be this real forever, if anything could ever be this good again, the only thing I'll ever ask of you, you've got to promise not to stop when I say when. The three had solemn expressions, as their movements died, fully appreciating the reunion, as they all held one another. Warm air tickled Izuku's skin, as Ochako breathed on him, a feeling he had missed immensely. The group hug lasted for what felt like a century, and even that wouldn't be long enough. Breathe out, so I can breathe you in, hold you in. And now, I know you've always been. Out of your head, out of my head I sang, and I wonder, when I sing along with you, if everything could ever feel this real forever, if anything could ever be this good again. The only thing I'll ever ask of you is that you've got to promise not to stop when I say when. Everyone had tears welling in their eyes as they pulled away from each other. So, I also made dessert. Izuku announced another surprise he had prepared to lighten the mood. You shouldn't have, Ochako. And Hikios hopped like giddy children. Your favorite Ochako. It's mochi. Izuku pulled out a tray of rice cakes for his girls to enjoy. The night then ended with his wife gobbling down the treats, while Hikios barely managed to scrounge up one. After Izuku tucked his daughter in and said goodnight, he found himself lifting up his shirt in the bathroom with a locked door. A severe ache in his side overpowered all the other throbbing sores as he applied a fresh pair of bandages. Ochako interrupted the personal aid by knocking on the door. You okay in there? I'm fine. An embarrassed Izuku pretended to flush the toilet and walked out once he was done. The beet red blush wasn't helped when he saw Ochako sprawled out on the bed waiting for him. You threw me quite the welcome home party, she chuckled as her husband laid down beside her. I'm glad everyone had a good time. Izuku shared a smile with his wife as the two curled up next to each other. It was great seeing Hikios so happy. Ochako reminisced the moment that had only transpired minutes ago. What did she do in the entrance exam? I mean, you gotta watch her, right? Yeah, you should have seen our little girl. She made a friend right away and worked with them to round up a bunch of points. I think she definitely passed, Izuku grinned. That's good, Ochako yawned, as the two continued to cuddle. I'm so proud of her. You did a good job raising our baby. Me? The green-haired husband tripped over his response. Ochako sighed heavily. Let's face it, you pretty much did all the parenting. I'm barely ever around and, hey, don't say that. I see plenty of you in our daughter too, you know. She's learned a lot from you, as well. Izuku shushed his wife with a finger on her lip as he reassured the woman. Ochako formed a smile again upon hearing her husband's words. You always did know what to say, you sweet talker. She began to flirt with her husband as her fingers walked across his chest. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. What do you say we catch up? Izuku gulped as he shrank in the bed due to his wife's seductive talk. Her hand still coasted along his muscular frame, slowly sliding down his side and towards the stab wound. Izuku immediately caught hold of her wrist and stopped it from touching the still recovering injury. Hikios is in the other room. He used it as an excuse. We can be quiet about it, Ochako whispered back as he climbed onto Izuku. The several bruises from his fight in the alley began to twinge under her weight despite it not being much. The grunts and groans as he tried to resist the pain made his wife back off. Are you okay? She worried. I'm fine. I just forgot I left something important at the school. I've gotta go get it. Izuku hated lying to his wife, but it was the best he could come up with. I can come with you, Ochako offered. No, that's fine. You're probably really tired from your mission, and someone has to stay here with Hikios. Izuku made more excuses as he rolled out of the bed. I guess you're right. I love you, Ochako replied with a dragged-out yawn. I love you too. Izuku couldn't meet his wife's gaze as he prepared to go out on patrol as a vigilante again. Izuku Midoriya wanted nothing more than to stay with his wife, but he couldn't risk her discovering his scars. Some fresh air brushing against his face as he leapt from rooftop to rooftop helped clear his head. I'll need to become better at making up reasons to conceal my secret. Maybe I can spend one night writing up a list of excuses. I hate to lie to Hikios or Ochako, but they don't know about this. Not only would they worry too much about me, but I don't even want to think about them finding out. That's why I have to create fake reasons to run out at night. Midoriya found himself rambling about the future of his vigilantism. It was only when he heard the sound of a woman screaming that he snapped out of the autopilot train of thought. Hero time. That's great. We'll have to celebrate tomorrow morning. Now, running along to your room. The lady's voice echoed from inside what appeared to be a warehouse. As Izuku neared the source, Midoriya figured it had been a shriek of joy considering how she sounded now. After scoping out the area one last time to make sure there weren't any life-threatening situations, he continued his patrol. However, whenever Izuku left, he hadn't taken a look inside the building to see two familiar criminals. Himiko Toga, a blonde-haired woman who wore an oversized cardigan to keep her warm, had been the source of excited screaming. Alongside her was the one who had overtaken over the League of Villains when Tamura Shigaraki got captured, a man covered in third-degree burns. The messy-haired individual scratched at one of his stitches. As he spoke, it looks like he pulled through. I wish that wasn't all you saw him for. Himiko pouted with her arms folded. It's not. The tone was hard to place. Well, I wish you'd tell him that. Toga didn't let up in her argument. I'm too busy managing what Shigaraki screwed up. There'll be plenty of time for what you want later, after my plan comes into provision. If you say so. Dabi. The ear-splitting ring of a bank alarm fell upon Izuku's ears next. It would be more than likely for a hero to become involved when it comes to larceny, but Midoriya still felt an obligation to intervene. Rather than rushing into a confrontation like the alleyway, the vigilante takes a stealthy approach by examining the environment thoroughly with each step of the way. The facility has a huge crater in the side of it, allowing for just about anybody to enter the main vault where money is stored. Izuku narrows his eyes as he counts off 6 masked burglars loading cash into giant sacks. There was no telling what any of the criminals had for their quirks, showing no visual altercations. Midoriya sighed as he prepared to go in blindly, focusing on the only one not wearing a ski mask, the only person not packing cash, and wearing a more elegant purple mask to match his suit and tie. That must be the leader. However, before Izuku can land a flying kick into his first target, he's railed by a fist full of sand. The vigilante rubbed the back of his throbbing head, trying to recuperate from what he could only assume was one of the burglar's quirks. I was wondering if I'd ever run into you. Funnily enough, you don't live up to the reputation. The purple-suited criminal milled around. As he spoke, Izuku forced himself to get back onto his feet. He'd endured worse injuries. You seem confident for a low-tier thief, ignorantly setting off the silent alarm? You're either full of yourself or just plain stupid. Midoriya tried to scare off his enemies by making them think of pro-heroes as reinforcement. It may have worked on 1 or 2 of the gang members, the sand user creating an artificial hammer out of his arm. However, much to the vigilante's dismay, the purple-suited man seemed more confident than before, as he gestured for his partners to back off. I'll take care of this one, the leader reassured his allies while allowing a concealed pocket knife to drop from his sleeve and into his hand. Izuku got into a defensive stance, running through several counterattacks when it came to overpowering an enemy who had a blade. The vigilante was shocked when the purple-suited leader tossed the knife onto the ground between them. Stab yourself. The command was directed at Izuku, and forced his body to tense up. Midoriya felt zero control over his body's movements as it reached for the knife. It's like some form of mind control. I can't stop following his order, but I'm fully comprehensible of what's happening. Izuku remembered experiencing a similar quirk during his time as a U.A student. It was how he had been eliminated from the sports festival. Hitoshi Shinso, the wild magenta hair protruding from behind the criminal's mask, sparked his memory. Izuku felt his hands shaking as he wielded the knife, slowly and steadily turning it to face his chest. The clad green vigilante knew he had to obey the criminal's command. He was going to have to stab himself. He never said where Izuku plunged the blade into his calf. The sudden spike of pain was enough to then snap Midoriya out of his enemy's mind control. Behind his mask, Shinso's eyes widened upon discovering another drawback of his quirk. As long as he isn't specific in terms of saying what he wanted the person to do, the awareness of their manipulation may cause them to reiterate his conditions. The vigilante took his short moment of vulnerability to send a powerful punch into Hitoshi's face, shattering the purple kabuki mask. The other burglars were stunned, as the green figure followed up by sweeping his leg under their feet. None of the thieves could counter with their quirk, as the vigilante brought down punches and kicks. One of the bandits released an electrical surge that was narrowly dodged by Izuku, and ended up hitting the other criminals instead. The vigilante limped with his stabbed leg to reach cover behind a massive cubicle stack of cash. Another lightning strike burned through the money, and knocked Midoriya across the room. With his options becoming limited, Izuku resorted to the same weapon his daughter had used during the entrance exam. A lengthy coil of cloth wrapped around his arm like a pair of bandages before shooting out, and taking hold of the electrocutioner's right ankle. All it took was one hard tug to pull the criminal's footing out from under him, allowing Izuku to rush forward and proceed with the capture weapon to restrain his opponent. Midoriya's body shifted with heavy breathing, his exhaustion finally getting the better of him and forcing him to his knees. Police sirens wailed in the distance. As his vision started to become foggy, the blood seeping out of his untreated stab wound making him begin to lose consciousness. Not like this. Not yet. The vigilante clawed his way across the floor. With the help of his steel wire alloy, Izuku grappled from the bank and onto a rooftop's ledge. It took a strained amount of effort to pull himself up before he rolled onto his back and began to black out. Izuku staggered into the classroom, ripping a skin-tight cowl from his face. His fingers found the light switch, flicking it on so he could stumble to his desk without bumping into anything. It was still a late hour with no faculty or students arriving for quite some time. Considering he couldn't go home while bleeding out, he went to the next closest place with proper medical materials. While the nurse's office would have been the better place to raid, he couldn't take supplies without them going noticed. His next best bet was to dig through his desk drawer and pull out a pack of band-aids he kept just in case a student got hurt. "I'm so screwed," Izuku groaned, as he stopped applying pressure on the wound. The deep scar was made more accessible once Midoriya tore the cloth around his calf to get a better look. Without rubbing alcohol or anything else to clean the wound, he had to take a spare water bottle and pour that over the cut instead. Blood mixed with water and made a massive mess as he took a stapler to seal the scar. He normally didn't like using stitches, but stapling it shut didn't seem like a better alternative. With a deep inhale, he pressed down and popped a staple into his flesh. Son of a dash. The sharp spike of pain matched the kind he felt when sticking the blade into his leg. Inhale and exhale, none of the meditating helped as he continued applying staples to the injury. The wound looked ghastly by the time he was finished, but it was the best he could do for the time being. All that remained was to clean up the mess and get back to his house before anybody could notice. That plan seemed simple enough, as he grabbed a mop from the janitor's closet. So, how come he was only able to succeed in one off the 2 steps? The clacking of heels on the school's tile caught his attention, making him instantly rush to remove the vigilante costume. In a panicked frenzy, Izuku tossed off the suit and stood in his underwear with multiple messy bandages or scars. "This isn't good. This isn't good. This is not good," Midoriya muttered to himself while frantically shoving the costume into his desk drawer. The man was hysterical, as he ducked down to hide from whoever was arriving so early. Luckily, the mystery person passed his classroom and allowed for Izuku to exit in the other direction. Since he couldn't go home in his underwear, Midoriya quickly grabbed a change of clothes from the teacher's locker. On his way back out though, he bumped into the person who had so narrowly missed him the first time. "Principal Momo. Yayorozu. Wait, it's Todoroki now." "Mrs. Todoroki. Hi," Izuku began nervously yammering, as he backed away from the authority figure. The woman had a contorted face of confusion, as she began crossing her arms over her chest. "Midoriya-san? What are you doing here so early? Shouldn't you be at home with your wife and daughter?" The principal kept a mild-mannered tone despite looking pissed hell off. "Yeah, I just wanted to." Izuku struggled to find an answer, as he pulled at the collar of his shirt nervously. "What are you doing here?" He shot back before quickly clasping his hands over his mouth. "Sorry." Izuku apologized for the outburst. Momo shook her head. "No, that's fine. It's a fair question. As the principal here, it's my duty to ensure everything is in order for the first day of the new classes. I actually just got done going over the entrance exams results. You'll be pleased to hear that your daughter passed." "My daughter passed?" A smile began to curl onto Izuku's lips. "Could you do me the honor of answering my question now?" Mrs. Todoroki requested. "Oh, sorry. I wanted to get familiar with the classroom and prepare as well." Izuku stammered out the first excuse that popped into his head. A toothy grin and thumbs up didn't help his situation, but he did it anyway. "I see. It's good to see the other school faculty working as diligently as I am, especially when it's coming from the instructor that'll be teaching my daughter." Momo nodded in encouragement. "Your daughter got in too? That's great, Momo." "Mrs. Todoroki. Principal Todoroki." Izuku became flustered as he struggled to find the best way to address his boss. "Momo will work just fine. We may be coworkers, but we're also still friends." The woman gave a warm smile. Izuku respectively bowed with a similar smile. "Thank you, Momo. It'll be an honor to teach your daughter. I'll make you, Shoto, and her very proud." The principal bowed in return. "We should probably get back to work now. There'll be time for catching up later. Maybe over a cup of tea sometime?" "Sure." Midoriya awkwardly waved his boss goodbye before letting out a heavy sigh of relief. Izuku trekked across the floor on the tip of his toes, using the full extent of his stealth when it came to such a dire situation. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, as the living room lights flickered on like a spotlight exposing him. Ochako sat in a recliner like some sort of sinister villain, as she glared at her husband. "Hi, honey." The green-haired man chuckled nervously, as he rubbed the back of his sweaty neck. "Don't hi honey me. What took you all night to get back?" Ochako was furious. It scared Izuku more than any of the criminals he faced, making the secret vigilante wish he was fighting one of them instead. I had to go to school, remember? Izuku frantically waved his hands in front of his chest, and backed away, as his wife stormed over to him. To get something you forgot, right? Well, was it worth it? Did you get what you needed? She shook her husband like a fortune ball. I bumped into Momo while I was there, and we talked about school stuff. Izuku technically wasn't replying when he gave his excuse for being so late. She told me Hikyo's passed. He also blurted out. This seemed to do the trick, as Ochako stopped shaking her husband. Our daughter passed? The mother began to shake with glee. Our daughter passed, she exclaimed while levitating into a fist pump. Izuku couldn't help but laugh at his wife's reaction before joining in on the celebration. Oh Izuku, I'm so glad. That'll make telling her I have another mission tomorrow so much easier. Ochako let out a huff of relief while falling into her husband's arms. So that's why you were so upset with me. We didn't get to spend enough time together before you had to leave again. Izuku shared the somber mood, as he began to realize his wife would be gone for another length of time. On the lighter side, at least I'll be able to sneak out at night a little easier. Yeah, but it shouldn't take long. It was just something about a vigilante. The words out of his wife's mouth made Izuku's heart clench and crumble. She must have noticed the sudden stiffness before she then asked, Are you alright? Izuku gulped back the feeling to weakly answer, Yeah. I was just wondering if you could take that assignment off, you know? Like a vacation. Well, maybe. I'll see if I can do something like that. It would be nice to spend at least a weekend with you. And Hikyo's at the beach or something. Ochako nodded in consideration. I definitely think you should try. Forget about the vigilante. He's probably not even worth your time. Izuku gave a weak and nervous chuckle. Ochako was used to that sort of thing from her husband, so she thought nothing of the strange behavior while giving him a kiss. You're probably right. Come on now, let's make breakfast and wake Hikyo's to share the good news with her. Ochako smiled. The new semester had finally begun. Izuku Midoriya was the first student to arrive in her class due to going in with her father, who happened to teach the same class. Izuku had planned to greet every student at the door, but reluctantly followed his daughter's suggestion to wait for everyone to be seated before introducing himself. The room seemed to fill rather quickly, with faces familiar from the entrance exam, and some new. The redhead named Yuro took a seat next to Hikyo's before anybody else could, thrilled that the two were in the same class together. Izuku cleared his throat before standing up with a clipboard to read off of. Okay, that looks like everyone. I guess we'll start by introducing ourselves, and do a roll call of sorts. He seemed uncertain about what he was doing, but continued nonetheless. Hey, I remember you. You're that guy who explained the rules at the entrance exam. You're Hikyo's dad. Hi Mr. Midoriya. Yuro's outburst made Hikyo bury her face in her arms to hide an embarrassed blush. Izuku shared the same shade of red upon receiving the sudden recognition. Hi, you must be Urakana. My daughter told me about you. And Izuku gave a polite bow. Dad, Hikyo groaned from her arm barrier. Izuku couldn't contain a nervous chuckle, as he moved on to the next name on his list. Jason Shimasu? Everyone turned to see a boy raise his hand upon having his name called. Hikyo cringed, as she recognized him from the entrance exam. Oh no. I have Puke Boy in my class. She recalled the boy eating rocks and spitting them back out as acidic blobs. Iris Todoroki, your Momo, and Shoto's daughter. Izuku happily referred to the white-haired girl who had created ice minions during the test. She looked like a younger version of her mother with the same kind of pointy ponytail pulled up. Whoa, some students whispered amongst each other about this revelation. She's the daughter of the #1 hero. So lucky. One kid groaned about how unfair it was while another complained. And her mom's the principal. It's true. Shoto Todoroki had claimed the top position on the hero chart under the title Harukarudo, and Momo Yayorozu married him shortly after becoming the principal of U.A to replace Niza. And Verde Tokoyami, your Fumikage, and Tsuyu's son? How are they these days? Izuku grew a grin bigger than All Might's had ever been, as he recalled his old friends. The boy shared his father's expressionless bird face, but sported green feathers rather than black. Dad is holding #2 on the chart while Mother works Coast Patrol, he shrugged, as if it were a boring topic to discuss. Come, we got the #1, and #2's kids in our class? How are we supposed to stand out with them here? A blonde student complained. Everyone here is making their own name for themselves. Nobody should be treated differently just because of their heritage, mister. Izuku tried to run down the list to discover his student's identity. Caramel Nagaidisu, sir. The blonde teen stood up while bowing multiple times in apologetic form. Your name is Caramel. A blonde girl with jacks dangling from her ears like earrings snickered. Shut up. What's your name then? Nagaidisa became flustered as he tried to defend himself. She looks like Kyoka's daughter, which makes her Abachaji Kaminari. Izuku grinned. Your name's Abachaji, which is, actually, kinda cool. Caramel hung his head in defeat. Izuku cocked his head upon reading the next name, Kasai. That's it, huh? Just one name, like Adele? Is that a problem? A boy with messy black hair grumbled from the back of the class. And no, that's fine. I actually think it's pretty cool. Izuku stammered out a response before clearing his throat. Okay, moving on. -0? The teacher glanced up to see a bubbly pink-skinned girl flagging him down. Oh, over here, that's me. She waved at everybody in the class with a beaming smile. She definitely took after her parents. And last, but not least is Shwaka Kurosu. Izuku gestured to the remaining student who looked more casually laid back than the others. The boy had short red hair combed to the side, and looked to be the tallest in his class. So are we just going to socialize like it's a daycare? Or are we actually going to do something? Caramel complained. The remark made Izuku sweat, and nearly lose the grip on his clipboard. I was getting to that. Today, we'll be starting with a quirk apprehension test to see how well you've got it under control, and what we need to work on improving. Bear in mind that I'll be writing notes during it, so don't get too pressured if you see me writing something down, Izuku announced. The class seemed to become much more enthusiastic upon hearing the news. All except for Izuku Midoriya cheered and murmured with their friends. Izuku took notice of his daughter's downtrodden attitude, and attempted to keep everybody's celebration short. Okay, so everybody came with me single file to the gym. The teacher nearly jumped through the roof when he saw his vigilante suit inside the desk drawer instead of a pair of keys. I completely forgot. Izuku began to internally panic. The bickering among students became interrupted by Izuku slamming his desk drawer shut to hide the contents inside. Never mind the GYM. The green-haired man glanced outside his classroom's window. It's a nice day out. Let's go do it outside. Follow me. Izuku laughed nervously as he ushered everyone out the door. Okay, so we'll begin with a 50-meter dash. Usage of quirks is not only allowed, but recommended. Izuku announced the first test once he had his class outside. Eat my dust! Caramel confidently cried out while extending his arms across the track like they were made of rubber. Izuku furiously made notes about the boy's elasticity. The move worked as a slingshot and launched him forward with ease. Alongside him, Hermione seemed to use a similar tactic with tape dispensing from her elbows. So she inherited her father's quirk. Izuku wrote what he muttered aloud. However, he then noticed the tape left behind singed into the grass once it was dropped. Acidic tape? Izuku scribbled the extra note. Yuro touched Hikyo's shoulders so the green-haired girl could keep up with the others who had to run normally. Some of the tests may have seemed unfair when considering your quirk wasn't natural for what was required, but it also helped Izuku keep track of who was innovative and who wasn't. Up next is the grip strength test, the teacher happily announced upon finishing his first few pages of notes. It had already become obvious each part of the quirk apprehensions pertained to certain common ones. It was natural for people to develop abilities revolving around enhanced speed or strength, so it wasn't only sensible for such tests to pertain to those certain kinds. Students had to use their quirks or natural potential to crush wooden, stone, and metal blocks. Hikyo's was fortunate for you yet again, as she splintered the bark, shattered the brick, and dented the scrap. Jason grossed everybody out by swallowing the objects whole, and vomiting them back out as a green smoldering liquid while Hermione used the acidic property of her tape to melt the cubes. Verde portrayed his mother's side by wrapping his tongue around the blocks and crushing them. I wonder if that's all he inherited or if he has other frog-natured abilities. Izuku tapped the pencil on his lip. Okay, the last test requires you to pitch a ball, as far as you can. Izuku realized some of his students hadn't used their quirks yet, and began to reminisce on how Eraserhead had gotten his class to give it their all. The person with the smallest distance in their pitch will be expelled. The teacher gulped, and sweat dropped as he lied to the class. A lot of the students complained and groaned about the sudden revelation, but what hurt Izuku the most was his daughter's tears. Dad, you know that'll be me, she sobbed. The girl was distraught due to being quirkless, and Izuku so badly wanted to comfort her with a hug. However, Yuro beat him to it with a reassuring promise to continue providing her with a boost from her quirk. Izuku cleared his throat as everyone began to calm down. So, any volunteers on who wants to go first? I've got this. Everybody get back. Caramel smugly marched forward while taking the ball from his teacher. With his quirk, the boy winded up and fired his arm into the sky like a harpoon. Ha! Beat that. His performance gained a round of applause from most of the class while Abachaji scoffed. Me next. Me next. The pink-haired girl bounced happily like her mother used to when she was younger. Izuku obliged by handing her the next baseball. Hermione placed the sphere against her elbow and fired off a stream of acid tape which sent the ball soaring like a rocket. Ha! Beat that. She teased the sulking elastic boy while the class cheered her on. Everyone's bickering made Izuku smirk upon recalling how alike they were to his friends during his time at U.A. I guess I'll go, Shwaka shrugged. That's the spirit. Izuku encouraged his student before the red-haired boy took the next baseball. Much to everyone's surprise, the tall teen then began to shrink to the size of an ant. When he returned to his original height, Shwaka used the momentum to toss the ball as high as he could. so he has the ability to shrink. I wonder if that also means he can double in size like MT Lady did? Probably not. Izuku scratched more detailed descriptions about his students' quirks. The next teen to display their power was Iris Todoroki. She used her eyes to create a catapult so it could throw the ball for her. Wow, a fully operational catapult. She did something similar during the entrance exam. Maybe she inherited ice from Shoto, but on a more advanced level? Wait, I'm forgetting about Momo. It must be a combination of her mother and father to make an ice creation quirk. That means she's a little bit like Hamina with her acid tape. Izuku continued making notes. Verde Tokoyami used his tongue to get a longer distance in the similar manner Hamina and Caramel had with their quirks. Jason disgusted everybody by swallowing the ball so he could spit it back out at a considerable distance. Hikios managed to throw her far enough thanks to the enhanced strength provided by Yuro. The only students to do poorly on the test were her, Abachaji, and Kasai. Izuku understood why the two girls had failed, due to Yuro emitting power to others rather than herself, and he simply assumed Abachaji was restricted to her ear jacks. However, the black-haired boy remained a complete mystery to him. Kasai, how come you didn't use your quirk in any of the exercises? Izuku wondered. Do you not have a quirk? Hikios blushed, as she asked her own question. I have a quirk, it just wouldn't have been helpful, Kasai shrugged. Does this mean I'm expelled? Izuku shook his head. Sorry, that was a little fib I had to tell you so everyone would give it their all. What? Everyone exclaimed. Hikios looked to be the most surprised, completely shocked upon discovering her father was even capable of lying. Everyone was talking among themselves when they re-entered the class, not fully spotting the sudden lockers that protruded from the wall in front of them. Whoa, I didn't know we got lockers. Hamina lightly clapped with joy. If you're excited about that, then just wait until you see what's inside them, Izuku smirked. Eager students raced to their assigned storage units and began digging into them with faces beaming like they just opened presents on Christmas. Hikios Midoriya gasped as she ran her fingers through the green fabric of a superhero uniform. Whoa, so this is why Dad and Mom told me to submit a sketch of what I wanted for a costume. She gasped at how accurately the request had been fulfilled. You'll all be suiting up after lunch when we begin our next and final trial for the day. Izuku shared the same goofy smile most of his class had on their faces. I can't wait. Hamina practically danced with excitement. Everyone already formed friend groups during the lunch break. Verde and Schwaka seemed to get along while Caramel got stuck with Jason. Yuro and Hikios shared a table with Hamina and Abachaji, also inviting Iris to join them to make a full gang of girls. However, the white-haired girl seemed to set her sights on Kasai, who sat at a table all by his lonesome. Maybe next time, girls. Iris waved them off before approaching the stray wolf of the pack. Do you mind if I sit here? She asked while already setting her tray of food down. Kasai didn't offer much of a response by simply shrugging. The two ate in an awkward silence, only sharing occasional glances before looking away and blushing. Iris looked over her shoulder when she heard the table filled with girls giggling, only regretting it when she saw them all giving her a thumbs up. The boys tried doing the same gesture for Kasai, but the loner barely paid any attention to them. After several awkward minutes, Kasai broke the silence. So, what's it like to be the daughter of Shoto Todoroki? His interest seemed genuine enough. Iris could only sigh in frustration upon receiving the same question so many people asked her on a regular basis. It's not as good as everybody makes it out to be. I barely ever see him because of all the hero work he has to do. So, can we just drop that subject? Iris groaned and began moving the food around with her fork in sorrow. Kasai flinched at her answer before lowering his head in shame. I'm sorry. My father. He barely shows me any attention too. Who is your father anyway? Iris wondered. I've lost my appetite. Kasai quickly got up with his tray before leaving Iris by herself. Wait, what did I say wrong? Iris reached out for the boy, but was far too late to stop him. Hikios Midoriya held her arms as she slowly edged her way outside. She was super shy about showcasing her costume to everyone, despite its awesome appearance. The Reseda green mixed with red, and had the same coil scarf she carried around her neck. Her hair hung out the back of a rabbit-eared caul connected to some sort of smile-shaped mouthpiece. Everyone marveled at her outfit, while Izuku's sweat dropped upon realizing it was heavily based on his vigilante costume. Chako's is gonna kill me if she ever finds out, the older Midoriya worried. Apparently Izuku wasn't the only one to notice its similarities to his suit because now everyone was making comments about it. Hey, you look like that vigilante that was on the news the other day. I heard he took down that Shinso villain. Yuro started the wave of agreement. Yuro's costume consisted of a yellow and orange camouflage sprawled over a dress. It complemented a headband she wore, and didn't really look like a suit someone could fight in. Iris looked like her father with the suit being a brighter blue color, and the body vest a dark black instead of white. Her hair was now let down from its ponytail, showing off the waist length. Kasai tried not to stare at her, but Izuku couldn't help but notice. It reminded him of how Shuto and Momo interacted with one another. Kasai wore a black trench coat he kept completely buttoned up, and only used grease paint as a mask. Verde wore a green cloak that matched his feathers, and looked like a perfect image of his father if fumigage were colorful. Schwaka looked like a blue astronaut, while Caramel wore a red bodysuit. Jason revived the green color scheme a lot of students shared with what looked like a boy's version of Chaco's suit. Jason, are you a fan of my wife? Izuku nervously asked. The boy looked his suit up and down like he knew exactly why he was being asked such a question. Nope, was all he could say back before joining the other students. Once again, Hermione looked a lot like her mother with fake horns placed upon her head, and a colorful unitard. Only Abachaji stood out, as different with a lightning bolt-styled outfit. Izuku figured it was based off of her father's design, but didn't quite understand why she had such a design when her quirk was like her mother's. Alright, another person announced their presence before dropping down. What was so surprising though, was that the purple costumed hero landed flat on their face. Are you okay? Izuku began to inspect the unmoving corpse before it jumped back to life. Perfectly fine, Midoriya. Now, who's ready for some combat training? The newcomer announced he was another teacher, and Izuku now recognized him as Minoru Mineta. Izuku couldn't help but slapped the palm of his hand against his face. Of course you're in charge of the battle trials. The new teacher was about the same height as his students, sporting a hero costume flashier than their own. Spherical objects posed, such as the man's hair with the same violet color that covered his outfit, and the ankle-length cape that draped over his shoulders. The only misplaced color was the glimmering white gloves and boots he also wore, along with a "Is that a diaper?" The pink-skinned girl did her best to stifle a laugh. Hermione doubled over when she saw the shocked expression on Minoru's face. It's not a diaper. The grown-up Mineta instinctively covered his lower half with the cape. A face flushed full of red was easy to notice since it clashed with his other colors. The class had to cover their mouths to avoid snickering at their sensei's embarrassment. Even Izuku had a hard time containing his laughter. Is it underwear? Caramel barely managed to gasp out his question with all the cackles and giggles. It's not underwear either. Minoru flapped his arms in frustration. Okay everyone, enough teasing your other sensei. Please treat him with the same respect you've shown me. Izuku tried to stop his own endless chuckling while lecturing the class. That's right, show me some respect. I'm the pro hero, grape juice, Mineta stated matter-of-factly. A cocky smirk etched across the teacher's face as he put his hands on his hips in a heroic pose. Grape juice? What kinda lame hero name is that? Caramel burst into another fit of laughter as he clutched his stomach. The elastic teen couldn't keep himself standing as he continued cackling over the teacher's alter ego. That's enough. Any more remarks like that, and you'll be going to the principal's office. Got it? Izuku suddenly let a more aggressive side break loose. Hikios was the most surprised at her father's sudden shouting. He never used a tone like that throughout her entire childhood. Even when she got into trouble he kept a calm and collective nature. The class recoiled at their scolding, and could only nod their heads in response. Thanks Midoriya-senpai. Mineta placed a thankful hand on his coworker's shoulder. Izuku couldn't contain a cringe as he tried to politely shake it off with a nervous chuckle. Senpai? Yuro snickered in a hushed whisper with Ikios. Now that you've gotten everybody's attention for me, it's time I announce the next lesson. Indoor personal battle training. You'll be split into teams, heroes versus villains, and fight each other 2-on-2. Minoru briefly ran over the basics. But how do we do that without any prior experience? Yuro began to hyperventilate. I tried to convince the principal to change our rules when it came to this simulation, due to the distinctive difference being you battle classmates, and not villain clones. Izuku nodded in agreement. However, most of you have parents who work in the hero field, and she had no doubt that they taught you a few maneuvers just in case. We're hoping practical experience teaches you the basics. The green-haired sensei clarified U.A's reasoning. Hikios smiled as she recalled training with her father and mother, noticing similar smirks or nods from her peers. Izuku pulled out the same binder he had used to take notes on his students' quirks during the apprehension tests. This will also help me further determine your capabilities. You'll find that using your quirk in combat is entirely different from common tasks, and partnering up with someone will help you prepare for likely teamwork, Mineta added. Right, Midoriya? He then looked to his coworker for reassurance. Izuku gave the purple pro an approving nod. Minoru cleared his throat before continuing. So listen up cause we know what we're talking about. Here's the deal. Villain teams are hiding a nuclear weapon in their hideout. A fake prop of a bomb, of course. Izuku interjected with a nervous laugh. Right. So, the bad guy's side has to either protect the nuclear weapon until time runs out or capture the heroes. The hero team has that limited amount of time to secure the bomb or capture the villains. Mineta finished explaining the battle simulation. Do we get to pick our team members? Hermione shot her arm up as she asked the question. The pink person filled with energy hopped between feet as she waited impatiently for an answer. To avoid the disadvantage of friends working together, We'll decide the teams based on drawing slots. It also helps prepare for real-life scenarios where you may have to work with another pro hero at random. Izuku answered his student's question while Mineta seemed to pull a tally box from who knows where. Team A will be heroes, Nagai-disu, and Kaminari, that'll be you too. Minoru announced what was written on the first slips of paper he pulled out. Karim gave his partner a thumbs up while Abachaji mouthed an inaudible fuck. And Team B will be villains, obviously. They are Akana and Shimasu. Izuku announced the second group. Why did it have to be Puke Boy? Yuro hung her head in disappointment, while Hikios tried to comfort her. While the young Midoriya girl was also upset about missing the opportunity to be paired with her friend, she was highly curious about who would be her partner. Team C is made up of villains too. That's gonna be Iris, Todoroki, and Kasai? That's it? Just one name? Like Adele? Mineta raised an eyebrow while he looked to his shrugging coworker for reassurance. Looks like we'll be on the same team. Let's give it our best. Iris tried socializing with her partner, but the edgy teen only gave a grunt as his response. Team D is heroes, Tokoemi, and my daughter, Midoriya. We'll be teaming up for this one. Izuku stammered out the next result. The green-haired teacher then made his way to the green-feathered teen and whispered, "Please watch over her for me." "You have my word." Verde bowed in respect as he made the promise. Team E has Zero and Kurosa on it. Also heroes, Minoru announced. "Hey, wait a second. We're short by 2 classmates. Who's gonna be the other team?" Hamina whined. Izuku and Minoru gave each other a glance before smirking. "We're a villain team too." The whole class shivered at the thought of having to fight their teachers. The first 2 groups facing each other will be Team A and Team C. The rest of us will be watching the match from a surveillance room. Give it your all, everyone, plus Ultra. Caramel and Abachaji stood outside the boarded-up building, each one uncertain as to how they should enter. "We're up against freaking Todoroki. We might as well call it a match," Nagai-disu sulked. The girl with earjacks used one to slap her teammate across the cheek. "That just means we have to try harder. Quit complaining about everything, and put your quirk to good use. Can you use your elastic arms to hoist us up?" Kaminari pointed to the only window that didn't appear to have some sort of blockage. Caramel blushed as he nodded his head, the girl wrapping her arms around his neck in a loose grip. Nagai-disu then extended both hands and propelled the hero team forward like a grappling hook. The rest of Class 1A watched as their peers stealthily sneaked into the hideout. Izuku's hand moved at the speed of light as he scribbled down notes about the hero team's strategy. On another monitor, Kasai and Iris appeared to be discussing something while they guarded the nuclear prop. Todoroki had frost emitting from her hands before she created ice mannequins like the entrance exam. Groups of 2 newly created minions split up, clearly meant to act as a diversion for the hero team. Once the first phase of the villain plan was enacted, Iris followed up by creating an icy cage for the bomb to be kept in. Kasai began to stroll across the room, much to Todoroki's dismay. "Where are you going?" Iris tried to keep her voice at a hushed whisper despite the anger leaking out. "We're the villains, aren't we?" "I'm going to play my part." Kasai shrugged her off before leaving. Meanwhile, Caramel waited impatiently. As Abachaji plugged her ear jacks into each corner, they rounded to see if she could hear the opposing team. "I say we forget all this stealth stuff. I'll just wrap up Todoroki with my elastic arms, and that Kasai kid doesn't seem like too much trouble." Nagai-disu kept his voice at a low whisper despite the impulse to pull a frontal attack. SSSHH, Kaminari waved her partner off. "Don't ignore me, come on, it's a good plan." Caramel continued to protest despite his teammates' constant shushing. "No, you don't understand, I hear something." Abachaji explained why she was trying to keep the volume low. This made Caramel shut up long enough for Kaminari to pick up the footsteps of an ice minion. "Watch out," she called out to her partner while tackling Nagai-disu. The 2 narrowly missed a swing from the ice henchman's fist. Caramel then retaliated with an attack of his own, shattering the goon into a bunch of shards. "We make a pretty good team," he commented with a smirk. The teenage boy was too distracted to notice the second ice minion coming up behind him, resulting in a rescue from Abachaji. "Heh, thanks. Don't mention it." Kaminari rolled her eyes while helping her partner to his feet. "This can only mean we're getting close to the bomb." The 2 then continued their cautious journey through the labyrinth, rounding each corner with unease. Class 1A watched with the same anxious feelings as each team grew closer together. Izuku's interest peaked when he saw Kasai venturing off on his own. The teen dug into a pocket of his trench coat and pulled out what appeared to be a pocket knife. Izuku's heart clenched as he worried about one of his students getting stabbed or cut, making him wonder if he should call off the match before things escalated. What surprised the spectators, though, was that the knife wasn't for the hero team. Kasai used the blade to carve a deep scar into the flesh of his hand, making the class recoil and close their eyes. Blood seeped from the careless teen as he dragged his palm across the floor, making a perfect red path. It didn't take long for the hero team to find the trail of red liquid. Caramel reluctantly gulped back any fear as he continuously followed Abachaji. The path eventually led them to a dead end where Kasai waited patiently for the duo. Kaminari pulled out a roll of capture tape that the teachers provided, ready to engage in combat. "Where's Todoroki? And the bomb?" Abachaji looked like she was playing the bad cop of an interrogation. "I lost track as I went." "Doesn't matter. It seems you found me. And I found you." As planned, Kasai shrugged nonchalantly. The teens shrouded in shadows took a step back, as the heroes edged closer. "Fine. We'll find her after we deal with you." Abachaji returned the casual shrug. Both teens had a war of shrugging off one another, making everyone else very uncomfortable. The duo of heroes continued edging closer, as Kasai became backed into a corner. What shocked Kaminari most was how carefree the enemy seemed to be, as he pointed down with a sinister smirk. The hero team glanced down to see what they had walked into. Izuku gulped as he watched from the surveillance system. They fell for his trap. Abachaji and Caramel were both standing in the middle of a circle of blood. Kasai's palm touched the red streak again. "Everyone asked me what my quirk was back during the apprehension test. I call it igniter fluid." Fire then began streaming along the blood-painted path. It looped around the hero team, trapping them in a ring of flames. "So his blood acts as some sort of gasoline. I wonder if that's only manageable through contact with oxygen or possibly worse, if it's only his blood that works." Izuku trembled at the thought of someone bursting into flames from the inside. Team C wins due to Kasai capturing Team A. Minoru Mineta announced the first victory. Iris cocked her head in confusion after hearing her teacher's statement through the earpiece. Kasai beat them alone? Todoroki's interest in her team members suddenly peaked. Team B and Team E are next. Shuaka and Hamina were in the same boat as the previous hero team. The pink-skinned girl used her acid tape to catapult each other into the open window. Once inside, Shuaka used his quirk to shrink into the size of an ant and hid in his partner's hand. Also like Caramel and Abikaji, the duo began cautiously sneaking through the building. Yuro and Jason immediately got into an argument over what they should do as a strategy. "I can eat the bomb if I can fit it into my mouth," Shimasa suggested. "Wouldn't that just be the same as forfeiting?" Akana ran a frustrated hand through her hair. "I didn't really think of it that way. You're probably right though," Jason nodded. Yuro huffed a heavy sigh. "Look, I'm not gonna be much help. This kinda falls all on you." "What do you mean?" Jason began to shake with worry. "My quirk only powers up other people, not myself. You have to fight the others all on your own if they find us," Yuro briefly elaborated. "I don't know if I can do that." Jason voiced his concerns while he clutched his stomach. "I think I'm gonna puke." "Don't you dare." Yuro jumped back after being stricken with terror. That's when Hamina Siro arrived, promptly using her tape to restrain Akana. The acid let out a slight hiss, as it singed Yuro's costume. Jason had no time to react, as Hamina unclenched her fist, and allowed Shuaka Kurosu to resize with an uppercut. With the villain team defeated, the heroes gave one another a victory high five. Team E wins. The announcement from Minoru Mineta made Hikios tremble with doubt. The young girl couldn't watch the monitors for a second longer, as she thought about the loss of her friend. Fear and worry began creeping into the teenager's head as she thought about potentially losing her match. Team D will be fighting us for the final round. Mineta started the next match. "I hope you have no problem battling your own daughter, Midoriya." Minoru turned to his partner with concern. "I should be fine. I want her to be strong and grow into a great hero, you know. So if this is what it takes, then so be it." Izuku hyped himself up. "Are you sure? I'd be so happy to fight her for you." The purple pervert had a drool seeping from his mouth at the thought of battling a teenage girl. Izuku put the potential pedophile into a position that could break Mineta's arm after hearing the offhanded comment about his daughter. Sorry, I didn't mean it." Minoru struggled, as he felt the applied pressure sprain his wrist. Class 1A gawped at seeing their sensei easily restrain a pro hero without using a quirk. "Hey, what is sensei's quirk anyway?" Caramel wondered upon realizing he never saw it used. "Let's watch closely and find out." Iris Todoroki gained the approval of her class, as they continued viewing the monitors intently. Verde Tokoimi and Hikios Midoriya took a different approach by entering through the building's front door. The hero team cursed themselves for being so careless, as a bell chimed to announce their arrival. The duo made haste to flee from their current position out of fear that the teachers heard it. Both teens hid in another room behind closed doors, preparing to discuss their course of attack. "I'm sorry to tell you this now, but I'm quirkless." "So?" Hikios didn't get to finish her apology, as the bird boy placed a finger over her mouth to shush her. The green-haired girl blushed profusely, and became frozen in place, as she realized she was having a physical interaction with the opposite sex. "I'm not concerned about what you consider to be a weakness. I suggest you focus on your strengths instead. For instance, one of the opponents we're facing is your father. That gives us a slight advantage since you know personal things about him." Verde reassured his partner. "My dad, knowing him, he's probably already got a plan on how to beat us. He's really good at strategizing, always thinking things through. Anything that I come up with will be expected. He doesn't know enough about you yet though. Like, what's your full quirk? Hikiyos began to see the logic in her partner's suggestion. It's hard to say. I feel like I've inherited more than one gene from my parents, but all I can manage is my mother's frog tongue. Tokoyami scratched the feathers around the base of his skull. That's not good. No offense. I mean, it's not good considering we're in the same boat. And don't know about Grape Juice Sensei's quirk, Hikiyos yammered out. We'll need to remain on our guard then. Verde nodded in agreement before the two started moving again. The duo found their way to a staircase that would help them reach the higher levels, but before Verde could enter, Hikiyos extended an arm to stop him. What's wrong? Tokoyami wondered. My dad will expect us to use the stairs. We need to take the elevator shaft. Hikiyos pointed to an out-of-commission conveyor. Didn't you say we should also do the opposite of what you suggest? Verde cocked his head. Well, yeah, but trust me on this one. Hikiyos got her partner to reluctantly agree before the two pried open the metal sliding doors. Verde then used his tongue as a grappling hook, and Hikiyos held onto him so the two could be pulled to their proper floor. Whenever the two stepped out of the shaft though, Verde's foot was met with a sticky purple ball, latching him in place. I'm stuck. Tokoyami alerted his teammate before the villain team performed their ambush. Minoru Mineta had supplied Izuku Midoriya with a few of his sticky spheres, allowing the green-haired sensei to plant several traps throughout the lair. Hikiyos narrowly ducked under an attempt to get her stuck, as well, eyeing her father who now revealed his hiding spot. I know you so well, sweetheart. Of course you wouldn't use the more obvious route of the staircase. I don't know whether I should be proud or discouraged that you still technically chose the obvious route by using the elevator shaft. Izuku's words made his daughter and Verde grimace. I told you we should have taken the stairs, Tokoyami groaned. Shut up, and restrain him with your tongue, Hikiyos called out to her partner who followed the order instantly. Izuku evaded the attempt to capture him with lightning-fast reflexes. That wouldn't have worked either. I had my neta guard the staircase in case you did decide to surprise me with an alternative path. Izuku gave away the position of his partner while dodging another shot from Verde's tongue. Tokoyami-san, get yourself free from that trap. I'll hold off my dad from here. Hikiyos began to unravel the scarf of steel wire clothes. Izuku realized his daughter was serious and got into a fighting stance. The technique taught by Aizawa proved to be a challenging and effective one. The capture cloth roped out like a lasso, mimicking her father's movements. It took a great amount of agility and acrobatics to evade such a lively substance. Much like Verde's tongue, Hikiyos began lashing out at her father with the strand. Izuku didn't break a sweat, as he easily evaded all her attacks. This didn't stop him from smiling though. He was so proud of his little girl, and how far she had come in her combat training. Really, Dad, you're smiling? His daughter's angry voice snapped him out of the daze, and threw him off guard long enough for Hikiyos to land a slap across his face. Everyone seemed to stand still, as they realized what had just happened. Oh God. Sorry Dad, I dash. Hikiyos didn't get to finish her apology, as her father took out her legs. That was really cheap to use my emotions as an advantage, Hikiyos complained. Well, I am the bad guy. Izuku sinisterly chuckled. The sudden dark side of her father sent chills down Hikiyos' spine. She began to back away, crawling back until she bumped into a wall. Once he had her cornered, Izuku dropped the fake evil grin, and felt pity for having to make her fail. Stay away from her. Bright Umbra. Verde took advantage of the father's hesitation by summoning a shining being from his midsection. The creature had features mirroring its master, but radiated like the sun, as it lashed out at Izuku. The teacher was so blinded, and surprised by the attack, that it was enough to knock him away. I'm sorry, Midoriya-sensei. I am merely holding to the vow I made to watch over your daughter. I thought you said your tongue was the only part of your quirk? Hikiyos gasped out in shock upon seeing the new prowess from her teammate. Verde rubbed the feathers on the back of his head, thankful they covered his face, and hid a slight blush. I thought so too, but seeing you in danger made me discover what I knew was hidden inside me. Tokoyami helped Hikiyos get to her feet. Oh, well, thanks for saving me. The green-haired girl shied away with a similar blush. The two then snapped back into action, and ran down the hall in pursuit of the bomb. Izuku held the throbbing bruise Verde's attack would leave on him, as he regained his bearings. That was a lot like his father's dark shadow. Such an unexpected move with perfect timing. I have to give it to them. They make a good pair. Izuku made mental notes to write in his journal later. Verde. And Hikiyos kicked open the door that led to the bomb room, only to be shocked upon seeing the nuke was missing. Minoru Mineta stood in its place with his cape draped around his body, and pulled to his jaw like Dracula. Looks like Midoriya-senpai was right. Moving the bomb to another room would catch you two off guard. Grape Juice let out a maniacal laughter. Your father is certainly living up to the reputation you created. Verde acknowledged Izuku's strategy to defeat the hero team. Hikiyos only offered an agreeing nod, and groaned in frustration that her dad managed to trick them a second time. Now suffer the great rush. Mineta then bolted at the duel while rapidly tossing his sticky spheres in a wild frenzy. Verde shoved his teammate to save her, taking the blunt of the attack and getting stuck in place. Tokoyami, Hikios cried out upon seeing her partner sacrifice himself. Find the nuclear weapon. It's my turn to hold the villain off. Verde ordered his team members. Hikios shared a thankful nod with her partner before running off with determination to finish what they had started. Get back here! Minoru was about to pursue the girl, but got hung up by Verde's tongue. Hey, no fair, let me go. Mineta struggled and kicked. Hikios Midoriya kicked down several doors as she continued racing down hallways, searching every room for where her father may have hidden the fake nuke. After numerous attempts, she finally found the right one and was about to grab it when Izuku Midoriya stood in her way. Damn it, Dad! Step aside! Hikios groaned in frustration. I'm sorry, Hikios, but I won't go easy on you just because you're my daughter. Izuku held remorse in his tone, but forced himself to keep fighting in the belief that it would make her stronger. Fine, the daughter of Midoriya draped her scarf once more. Izuku heavily sighed, as he prepared for what could be a challenging battle. The father and daughter then charged one another head-on, blocking jabs and knees, as each one performed spectacular displays of combat. It looked like the two were entangled in an elegant dance, as they sparred with one another, hand-to-hand fighting that brisked around the room. Everyone in the surveillance room gasped at how they were both able to keep up and perform perfectly. Izuku found himself grinning again, but so was Hikios, as the two actually felt like they were having fun together. Go Hikios! Yuro Akana cheered from the spectator booth as she watched the fight on the monitors. Hamaina and Abachaji joined in with the whoops and hollers for their classmate as the battle raged on. Nobody could take their eyes off the screen as they watched both Midoriyas wage all-out war. Each fighter lunged, swinging, and missing while the other retaliated with a kick or punch. Izuku slapped aside his daughter's palms and feet as if he were wiping a window or waving someone off, while Hikios continued to dodge and weave against her father's attacks. Blow by blow, each fist struck a palm, and each kick pressed a hand. They struggled to break through each other's defenses, both failing miserably. The pace remained despite each fighter's faltering stamina, leaving nothing but a blur for spectators to view. Izuku caught his daughter's hand before thrusting it forward and using his own weight to toss her over his shoulder. The move reminded him of his first fight during U.A's battle trials, one he had planned and used on Katsuki Bakugu. The childhood tormentor left his mind as Izuku refocused on the fight at hand. Hikios regained her footing, preparing for another round. The older Midoriya prepared to counter his daughter's next attack, until he caught the glimmer of a security camera recording the entire battle. Izuku began to realize the entire fight was being recorded, and the tape would display all of his combat moves. The secret vigilante began to worry about his identity being discovered if a viewer were to recognize the same technique from other recordings. The alleyway fight and bank battle flashed through his memory, making Izuku go on the defense and pull his attacks when going on the offense. Hikios started losing her former excitement as she began noticing her father falter on purpose. Are you letting me win? What happened to what you said about not taking it easy on me? She complained through heavy breathing. Izuku purposefully threw sloppy punches and forced himself to narrowly dodge attacks. You're forgetting that I'm older than you, sweetheart. I got winded faster, Izuku painted back. He hated lying to his daughter, but had to make some sort of excuse to avoid suspicion. Hikios frowned as she realized the elegant dance they once had was gone. All that remained was an off-key trip-up. Since her father was starting to hold back, she could now manage to land a few hits. To test her theory that he was pulling his punches, she left an opening for him to take advantage of. When Izuku backed off instead of taking it, she huffed in disappointment. I knew it! I'm not some little girl that doesn't know what she's doing anymore. I can handle my own against you. She heaved in both anger and exhaustion. I know that, sweetie. I'm not holding back out of fear that I'll hurt you. I'm trying, as hard as you are, Izuku lied yet again. Even when the two held a non-sync battle, he had been revoking himself of going all out. If he really tried to beat her, he would destroy her in a matter of seconds. Izuku also refused to hit his own daughter. It was the one thing he wouldn't do. You're lying. Hikios sobbed through tears before rushing her dad with equally sloppy swings. Izuku easily managed to counter them, and tripped her up before backing off again. See? You could have beaten me there, but you're letting me go on. His daughter's crying felt like a dagger piercing Izuku's heart. What do you think they're talking about? Jason Shimasu wondered from the surveillance room. The feed had no audio. Only teachers were able to hear and communicate with the previous battle trial teams. Midoriya-san Yuro gasped out upon seeing her friend's upset expression on the monitor. Izuku sidestepped his daughter's desperate attacks now, all sense of martial arts thrown out the window. Their battle had been reduced to a pitiful match, and it was time for it to end. Izuku regretted kicking out the back of his daughter's knees and shoving one of her arms behind her back, as he pinned the other. Hikyo struggled against the pin, but only cried out in pain upon Izuku twisting her arm. You're beaten. Tap out, her father sighed. Never. Hikyo continued wriggling in her dad's grip. Izuku applied more pressure to the hold he had on her arm, making her writhe in agony. It's no use, Hikyo. This particular hold requires you to break your own arm to escape it. That's the only way out of the pin. Izuku tightened his grip to emphasize the point. Whatever it takes, the teenage girl cried out, as she dislocated the bone and broke free from her father. Izuku watched in awe with the rest of his class, as Hikyo carried her own weight to the nuclear weapon. I win, she sobbed while placing her one good arm on the object. That's my girl. Now let's get you to the infirmary. Izuku smiled, as she fell into his arms. Team D wins. Time for a recap. Minoru Mineta stalled for time with Class 1A while his coworker tended to Hikyo's injury. Can anybody tell me why certain teams failed, and others didn't? Grape Juice asked the crowd of students. Because my partner sucked. Yuro folded her arms. I do not, Jason shouted while on the verge of his desk. The interaction between students was enough to make Caramel and Abachachi snicker while Kasai and Iris rolled their eyes. Hamina and Shuaka had to stifle a laugh considering they were the ones who beat Yuro's team, each one desperately trying to hold it in. You totally do, it's all your fault, Yuro yelled back. The argument was just too much. Siro and Kurosu burst into fits of laughter. Akana, refrain from blaming your classmate for the failure. Izuku's arrival was like a sudden wave of silence washing over the room. Midoriya-sensei, how is Midoriya-san? Your daughter? Yuro eagerly asked. Yeah, how is she? Mineta had a creepy tone when sharing the same question. It earned a smack upside the back of his head from Izuku. She's recovering well. Come tomorrow, she'll be back in commission. The green-haired teacher shared a relieving smile with the class. Glad to hear it. Iris Todoroki shared a consoling nod with her sensei. Yeah, she was so awesome when fighting you. You were all like, whack and thwack, and she was all like, NUUH. Ham-Zero performed crazed hand motions like she were in the Matrix or something. Sensei was a badass too, Jason Shimasa chimed in. His compliment was enough to make Izuku blush in embarrassment. It was pretty awesome. Caramel Nagaidisu agreed with the chorus of praise from his classmates. Though, we never did get to see your quirk. I'm curious as to what it may be, Todoroki pointed out. Izuku awkwardly rubbed the back of his neck while Mineta answered for him. Midoriya-senpai is quirkless. That's what makes him so special. Most of the class let out oh and ahs at this revelation, completely taken by surprise. That explains why Hikyo has none either. Not to mention your various forms of martial arts. Without a quirk, you too taught yourself different combat techniques to keep up with the rest of us. Verde Tokoemi gave credit where credit was due. I guess the secret's out. Yep, I'm quirkless. Izuku nervously and anxiously laughed despite the class applauding him for it. But I don't get it. Didn't Midoriya-san show signs of super strength and speed during the apprehension test and entrance exam? Nagaidisu remarked. Oh, that was all me. My quirk acts as a sort of upgrade for others, Yuro chimed in. Which reminds me, we should get back on topic. You blamed Shimasa for your failure, but you can't always rely on others to carry you to a victory. You only see your quirk as useful to others while you need to focus on making yourself more powerful. That's the real reason you two lost to the other team, Izuku lectured Akana. I couldn't have said it better myself. Midoriya-senpai, Minoru flashed his coworker a thumbs up and grinned. Joke's on him. I never would have thought of such wisdom, but he'll never know that. As long as I play along. Mineta had wicked thoughts despite Izuku knowing full well that this was the case. But sensei, how do I focus on making myself stronger when my quirk is meant for others? Yuro wondered. There you go again, assuming that's the only way it can be used. All quirks are created equally and have multiple uses. When it comes down to it, Izuku's answer made Yuro's face flush red. You and Midoriya-san showed off some pretty cool moves, sensei. Can you teach me how to do that? And then I'd have a way to fight for myself? Akana asked. I'm sure Hikyo would love to see you more often around the house, so we could possibly fit some training in. Izuku smiled at the thought of taking on another protege. Me too. Can you teach me too? Other students began speaking up about their interest until it got out of hand. It took Mineta screaming at the top of his lungs to make them all stop shouting. Why did you yell like that? Izuku stammered while uncoupling his hands from his ears. It worked, didn't it? Minoru shrugged. I guess. Whatever. Moving on. So, we were discussing why certain people failed, and others succeeded. That all rides on the same problem I saw each of you exhibit. Teamwork. Izuku went from addressing his coworker to the class. I see. Like how Kasai ran off on me. Rather than working together to defend the bomb, Iris used her simulation as an example. Kasai only offered a grunt as his response. He still managed to win though, and that was going against Kaminari-san. And I who had actual teamwork, Caramel pointed out. That may be true, but things could have easily gone differently. Let's say Kasai was the one to get captured, and not Nagaidisu or Kaminari. then Todoroki would have been all by herself, and would have the disadvantage. Teamwork is usually the key to success, Izuku reasoned. Yes, like how Shimasu and Akano were dysfunctional working together. They were too distracted with their arguing that Zero and Kurosu were able to get the drop on them. Verde offered a perfect example. Exactly. When two teams that were able to cooperate with one another like yours and mine collided, it was a more indecisive and drawn-out match, Izuku agreed. Yeah, everyone looked at Minoru, who decided to butt into the conversation. What? Anyways, I think I made my point pretty clear. We covered a lot today. I think everyone made excellent progress. Tomorrow, we'll really put your quirks to the test and focus on some rescue simulations. Until class was dismissed, Izuku allowed the students to then disperse and go home. Dabi used his heated fingernail to carve a burned and smiley face, patiently waiting for Himiko Toga to make him a cocktail. After their former associates and bosses, Kurojairi and Tamura Shigaraki, were put out of commission, the two villains claimed the bar as their own. When the couple weren't managing drug trades or weapon shipments in a warehouse, they were here in the makeshift little lair. Do you think our little spy managed to get anything useful today? The crazy blonde wobbled like she had already drunk thousands of the shochu she served Dabi. The burn victim plucked the mini umbrella Toga had added for decoration from his drink before downing it. Dabi etched the face he had signed into the bar counter to look more like a frown. I wouldn't be surprised if he fell short of our expectations. The new kingpin of crime slid his empty shot glass back to the hostess. You need a little more faith in me. He's a good boy, Himiko reassured her partner in crime, as she began mixing him with another drink. Only because he's properly punished when he fails. Dabi ignited a miniature ball of smoldering blue flames to imply the kind of torture he had performed. The fire danced in the palm of his scarred hand, flickering around as it tried to grab onto another victim. Himiko surprised the man by grabbing his wrist with a strong grip. Don't. The statement was more of a warning than anything. Toga lost her grasp upon receiving an intent glare from Dabi. Please don't. This time she was pleading. That depends on whether he failed or not, was all that Dabi offered in response to console the woman. The exchange was then broken up by the arrival of someone else, the person they had been discussing. Then it's a good thing I didn't fail. I have something for you. Something you'll like very much. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.